Hi students, in previous class we have learned about Geet-Hofstede cultural dimensions, and in today's class let us learn about KLUCKHOHN and STRODTBECK theory and Hall's theory of cultural context. If anyone missed the previous class, the links will be provided in the description box. Now let's see about KLUCKHOHN and STRODTBECK theory. KLUCKHOHN and STRODTBECK theory. This theory is based on the patterns of behavior and thinking in different cultures. The resources distinguish and compare cultures based on the dimensions. How this KLUCKHOHN and STRODTBECK theory is totally based on the patterns of behavior and thinking in different cultures. And in the same way, there are some dimensions and the comparison, how we compare with other cultures is given. Now let's see the orientation of people and pattern of behavior. Here, what are the dimensions we will see in another cultures and how we compare other cultures with some dimensions. One of them is nature of people. The first dimension is nature of people. Nature of people. What is the nature of people? Like how we compare the people from one culture to another culture and how the behavior and how the nature of the people will be. The assumptions of people in different cultures about human nature, which could be good, evil, or mixed. For example, let us take the McGregor XY theory. In that theory, McGregor has proposed that the theory Y corresponds to assumptions of human nature being good, which means here theory Y shows the assumptions of the good people, good behavior of the people, while theory X corresponds to assumptions that human nature is basically evil. Where people at work require controlling, it is easier to build teams and delegation of authority is more common in countries where the orientation of people and organization is good. Here it is easier to build teams and delegation of authority where the orientation of the people and organization is good. According to McGregor, he proposed that where the people and organizations orientation is good, there they build a delegation of authority and build it is easier to build teams. And the second dimension is person's relationship to nature. What is a person's relationship to nature? It may be like dominant, harmony, or subjugation. Let us see how this person relationship will be with nature. How the person's relationship to nature. And this orientation is about relationship to nature, which means which relates to locus of control, how we control, where the controlling point will be, whether it is internal or external. Of course it is internal control or external control, but how the relationship will be with nature. For example, with an orientation of Americans, its Americans orientation is dominant. They believe that man can control nature and spend huge amounts on space research, weather control, biotech, and so on. Here, Americans believe that man can control nature, and in Eastern countries, their orientation is towards harmony. They believe that there should be some peace between man and nature, and they desire to avoid conflicts, and they mainly believe in astrology and assign all success and failure to God. People usually resist change. Here, where the people's orientation is harmony, there they usually resist the change, and in the same way they believe more in astrology, and whether it is good or bad they will leave it on to the God itself. And the third dimension is person's relationship to others, how a person will be treated with others and how there will be a relationship with others. It is totally about the importance of hierarchy or respect for seniority on the basis of age, family, or official position. In countries like Thailand, China, and Indonesia, there is more followership than leadership. And in the same way, in countries with an orientation towards collectivism, there the needs of the group are uppermost and people strive towards consensus. And where in an individualistic countries, people strive towards individual excellence and this is valued by society. Here we can see hierarchical, collectivistic, and individualistic. For example, while coming to collective hierarchical, for example, on the basis of age, family, and official position, the people respect them. The people respect the others. We can see this type of hierarchical orientation in Thailand, China, and Indonesia. And we can see collectivism in countries. We can see this in collectivistic countries. There will be a need for the group. The groups will be given the more important. For groups, there will be more importance. Individualistic countries like US, they believe that they believe through the individual excellence, and the society is also valid that individual excellence only. Now let's see the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension is modality of human activity. Modality of human activity, it is towards doing, as in the case of Americans, Germans. Self identification is achieved through action and performance. Here, how a human activity will be performed, like doing, being, and containing. Which means, let us see. Where the orientation is towards being, people are more philosophical and spend time in abstract thinking. And in countries like Middle East and in India and China, status in life is derived from birth, age, family, and social connections more than one's achievement. And let's see, like in Americans, Germans, self-identification is achieved through action and performance. Everyone in these countries is trying to develop a better mousetrap. The rate of very high. Companies spend a great deal on research and development. For examples like in America, Germany, and self identification, their orientation is towards doing, where everyone in these countries are trying to they spend more on research and development. They give more importance for the innovation which will be possible through individualistic. And in some countries like India and in Middle East countries and China, they give importance for the containing, which means how a status in life, here status in life is derived from birth, age, family, and connections. And while coming to the orientation of being, people are more philosophical and spend time in abstract thinking. In the type of being orientation, there the people will be more philosophical. And the next dimension is temporal focus of human activity. Here the pattern will be future, present, and past. In this, if we are thinking for the future, that means in the countries like US, the belief is that a better future can be planned and controlled because their orientation is in future. And while coming to past performance, while comparing to past, they give less importance. For past, they give less importance while compared to the future. There is great focus on career planning and training. In countries like which countries are future oriented, they give less importance for the past and they give more focus on career planning and training. And if the orientation is towards past, like in India, Pakistan, and the Middle East, people base their decisions on lessons learned from the past. If there is for example, in our country, we mostly compare with our past, like by the lessons what we learned in the past, they give us experience, and we will learn from our past. And some of the countries like which are past oriented are Pakistan and the Middle East countries, and of course our India too. So patients learn from the past. And the sixth dimension of the sixth dimension of KLUCKHOHN and STRODTBECK theory is conception space. Here the conception space is private, public or mixed, which means in some countries they prefer what to be kept privacy, and in some countries there will be a privacy, in some countries there will be no privacy, everything will be public, in some countries there will be privacy and in the same way there will be public also. Like concept of space, this is the concept of space in the minds of people, how much people value privacy. If people think space is public, then a notice that a meeting is in progress interpreted as request to stay out. In countries like China, space is more public, where doors are not closed. When doors are closed, people suspect something fishy. In the Western countries, on the other hand, space is more private. People like their own chambers and always knock before entering others' room. Here, it totally based on the space, how people value their privacy. In countries like China, there will be no, if for if for any reason if a door is closed, if for any reason if a door is closed, the people may think that there is something fishy. And in some countries and in Western countries, there is some space between person to person, they maintain a privacy. For example, if they wanted to enter to any room, they knock the door and they take the permission and then they will enter into the room. Thus the conception of space, and these are the dimensions has been provided by the KLUCKHOHN and STRODTBECK in order to learn about how a person behaves and thinking in different cultures. Now let's see Hall's theory of cultural context. Hall's has been distinguished cultural context into two categories, like high context and low context cultures. Here, how he distinguished means it is totally based on how high context culture people behaves and low context people behaves. There is a main difference between high context culture and low context culture. Here, members of high context culture depend heavily on the external environment, situation and non-verbal behavior in creating and interpreting communication. And members of this culture group learn to interpret the convert clues when they communicate. So much meaning in conveyed indirectly. In low culture context, the environment is less important and non-verbal behavior is often ignored. Therefore, communication has to be explicit and clear. People pay more attention to words than gestures. Members of high context culture, they morely depend on external environment and situation and non-verbal behavior while creating and interpreting communication. And this culture group learn to interpret the, and the people from low context culture, they give less importance for the environment and non-verbal behavior is often ignored. They won't give the people from low context culture doesn't pay more attention towards gestures. They pay more attention to words. Here the communication has to be explicit and clear, what we are clear in low context culture. Now let us see the characteristics of high context cultures and low context cultures. In high context culture, people in authority are personally responsible to the actions of subordinates. In high context culture, the people who are in authority are must take their subordinates responsibility as personally. And while coming to low context cultures, here relationships between individuals are of relatively short duration and deep personal bonds with the others are not greatly valued. In low context culture, the relationships are very short and they won't give more importance for personal bonds with others. And while coming to high context culture, agreements between members tend to be spoken rather than written. Here the agreements will be through spoken only. They don't give more importance for written. While coming to low context culture, here messages are explicit. The sender depends less on the receiver to understand it from this context. Here, whatever we say, the sender is not responsible for what the receiver has understood. While coming to characteristics of high context culture, insiders and outsiders are closely distinguished. Outsiders include first non-members of the family, organization, and foreigners. Here, insiders and outsiders are closely distinguished. Like outsiders are based on non-members of the family, organization, and foreigners. And while coming to characteristics of low context culture, authority is diffused throughout the organization and pinned down. Here it's diffused overall the organization, and there will be no personal responsibility. In the same way here, in low context culture, agreements are always written and expected to be binding on both parties. Here, whatever the agreement is made will be written and both the parties must be binded to that agreement. In high context culture, the cultural patterns are slow to change. The cultural patterns will be changed slowly. This model is useful in understanding how members of different cultures develop business relationship, negotiate with insiders and outsiders, and implement contract. And this is the Hall's theory of cultural context. He in his theory he have distinguished two context cultures like high context culture and low context culture, where high context culture they mostly depend on environment and interpreting communication. While coming to low context culture, they give less importance for the non-verbal communication and they give more focus on spoken words rather than gestures. This is about KLUCKHOHN and STRODTBECK theory and Hall's theory of cultural context. In next class, let us see about Andrew Lawrence study of culture, Lawrence's cross-cultural studies, and problems in cross-cultural management and importance of cross-cultural management. Thank you. If anyone have missed the previous classes, I will provide the links in the description box. Please go and check it once. Once again, thank you.